It's really interesting as I was doing some research for today's topic
Yeah.
and kind of looking into China's role, the global energy transition. It was really interesting because China is simultaneously the world's largest coal user and emitter. It's the biggest clean energy builder, and it's also the dominant manufacturer of clean technology. So it is a source of climate risk, but it's also kind of a key and indispensable player in the global energy transition.
They added 543 gigawatts of power capacity in 2025 alone. And since 2021, China has added more power capacity across all the energy technologies than the United States has built in its entire history. And China exported more than 3 million EVs between January and November of 2025. For our listeners that don't know, what EV means, electric vehicles. The EV adoption in China has reached about 53% of its auto sales compared to just 5.8% 5 years earlier. I think Africa is having its moment at this point because the Africa Energy Week, they launched this strategic investment agenda, which they believe that is crucial for the continent because it will make the continent good when it comes to energy and also shifting the global geopolitics. And over 13 gigawatts of utility-scale solar and wind projects are under development across the continent, which I believe will help the continent of Africa. I saw a study by the University of Oxford, which found that a rapid shift to renewable energy by 2050 will save the global economy at least $12 trillion in energy system costs. And so the more renewable energy that is manufactured, the cheaper it gets. And China is doing everything it can to accelerate that learning curve faster than anyone had predicted.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of the Sustainability and Climate Podcast. As always, I am your co-host, Labake Ajiboye Richard, and I've got Toby with me. Hi, Toby. How are you?
Hi, Labake. Hi, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode. I'm well. I'm good. I can't complain. How have you been? How's the week been?
It's been good. It's been
Yeah.
really good. So interestingly enough, I did a panel this week
Oh, yes, I
for
saw that.
Lagos Energy Week. Yep, for Lagos Energy Week. And it was
Yeah.
kind of my first foray, if you will, into the oil and gas industry because I've worked in sustainability for a number of years, but I've not really worked with the oil and gas industry. And so this was kind of a conversation around, gas and natural gas utilization, advancing domestic use of that, and it was really interesting.
Yeah.
Might play a little bit more in that sector. Who knows?
No, that's
Who knows? But I
good.
think
That's good.
yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. We definitely should even have some people from that sector in the
Okay.
conversation,
Yeah, no,
on the
that
podcast. Excuse me.
and that's just so funny that you were on a panel that has to do with energy, oil and gas, and today's conversation is around energy as well. But
Yes.
before we go into that,
Yes.
that's good. That's good to know. But
Yeah.
for me, I've
Oh,
been good. I've been good as
yeah.
always, staying out of trouble, minding my business, doing the work that pays. But apart from that, I've been all right.
That's good. Staying out of trouble, we're yet to see. We need to measure. We need to measure that somehow. But
Fair
yeah, I
enough.
feel like time is also going by pretty quickly. We're already towards the end of February,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
almost all the way through Q1, or
Yeah,
at least
sadly the
halfway through
best.
Q1.
Yeah,
So
sadly
so
we're
far so
coming to
good.
the end. We're coming to the end of the best month of the year, but it is what it
Well,
is.
debatable. Debatable.
No, because it's the
Debatable.
best month because the best people are born in the month, and so we reduce your working week and your working hours,
By
by
two
making the month,
days.
yeah, by 2 days. Okay, like how grateful people are if there's a bank holiday or there's a break to say, oh, don't come to work today because of they get time to rest. So
It's not significant enough, but I'll let you have it. It's not
all
significant
right, cool.
enough, but I'll let you have it. Okay. What we got
Okay.
on the news docket today?
Well, we've got a lot. But before we go into the news, I think well, first of all, shout out to everyone who has been listening to our season 4, episode 1. Thank you so much, guys, for your comments, for your shares, for your reposts. It's been great. Seeing the response from season 1, and like we mentioned, we are going to make sure that every episode rather comes with a different vibe and making sure that we present you guys with the best of the best in terms of guests and in terms of topics that are very relevant to us and also that it concerns the topics or the conversation that the podcast is all about. And so before we go straight into our stories, or rather our topic for today, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that has been happening in around the world, the good, the bad, the ugly. But I think it's important that we start with the good before they say that, oh, Toby's always coming with bad goals. Anyway, I think for me, one thing that I saw earlier this week is the Africa's energy investment. And so I think Africa is having its moment at this point because the Africa Energy Week, which is a very familiar um, week that happens in Africa, they launched this strategic investment agenda, which they believe that is crucial for the continent because it will make the continent good when it comes to energy and also shifting the global geopolitics. And over 13 gigawatts of utility scale solar and wind projects are under development across the continent, which I believe we help the continent of Africa. And I think what's particularly significant is that there's been a major licensing round going around the different countries in Africa, from Libya to Angola to Nigeria and Algeria, and they've all opened like this new LNG facilities, which they believe that will help a lot of Africa. And also, there's a projection that the potential will reach about $1 billion across the African continent, with 600 million Africans still living without electricity. So they are hoping that this new energy plants will create more avenue for electricity across the continent of Africa, which I believe is great because when there's electricity, the businesses will grow and you see more development across the African continent. So I believe this is a great news, and I'm hoping that it will not just be one of those headlines, but it will be something that these different African countries that have received their licensing rounds will implement and will better the people that live in those countries.
Fantastic. We will keep an eye on this
Mm-hmm.
and follow up. Did you have another news item?
So Lalaki has made me the news presenter for today. Yes. So from Africa, we'll go to Latin America. So the International Renewable Energy Agency they issued a call for renewable projects, renewable energy projects across the Latin American region. With deadline for proposals to be submitted by 1st of March. And the reason why they are doing this is they want the region to generate about 70% of its electricity from renewables, which will be higher than other major regions. But they face this again. Money is important for these kind of things to happen. So the Latin America, they need to mobilize about 150 billion annually by 2030 to be able to unlock its extraordinary solar, wind, hydropower potential. But yet, at the moment, they've only received about 70 billion in clean energy investments. So just 4% of the global transition capital. So they are hoping that this region that is caught between having some of the world's best renewable resources and some of the highest capital costs and microeconomic risks. Yes, I got that. And so they hope that with this, it will help to bridge the gap, and which will also help to determine whether Latin America becomes a renewable energy superpower or remain trapped in its potential. So they are hoping that more investment come in so that the capacity that they have in terms of producing renewable energy will not just be dormant, but hoping that this finance will create more opportunities for it to grow because $150 billion, if you look at it, is not a lot of money. It's something I know that Labake can just call the International Renewable Energy Agency to say, you know what, I want to sort out. But you never know. So yes,
Expect a call from me, guys.
so yeah, they're hoping that they get this money so that it will help the region of Latin America. So yeah.
Awesome. I hope they get it as well.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully, because at the end of the day, I see this project as it to benefit the people, but also bring more development in those regions, right? And just like we mentioned in Africa, where there's renewable energy, it creates more employment, it creates more opportunities for businesses, and yeah. So I just hope that these regions that are looking for money to grow and to expand their energy base will get it, so that at the end of the day, the people they get to enjoy and benefit from these things.
I hope so too. And I think that's a perfect segue into today's topic. Because
Yes,
today's topic is on energy
energy.
and the energy dominance, regional energy dominance,
Yeah,
changing powers, changing or the energy transition, who's playing the bigger role, what that means, and how that impact the rest of the world as we kind of go through the energy transition.
Yeah.
Today, we kind of wanted to talk a little bit about China's role in the global energy transition,
And I think that's
and what it can.
well, sorry for cutting. I think that's one country we've not really focused on the podcast.
Hmm.
So I think for us it was important that we 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 focus on it, because not just because we want to focus on it, but because there's a lot happening
Yes. Yes.
in that landscape, and so we felt that it was important for us to have that kind of conversation in terms of China and their dominance when it comes to energy. So yeah,
Yes, I agree. I agree. And I think it's really interesting as I was doing some research for today's topic,
yeah,
and kind of looking into China's role, the global energy transition. It was really interesting because China is simultaneously the world's largest coal user and emitter.
yeah,
It's the biggest clean energy builder, and it's also the dominant manufacturer of clean technology,
oh, wow,
right? So it is a source of climate risk, but it's also kind of a key and indispensable um, player, if you will, in the global energy transition. And I thought
yeah,
that was very interesting because, to me, at least, I think it shows China paying attention to and understanding kind of their role
yeah,
and their emissions footprint, their patterns, but at the same time doing something about it or trying to do something about it. And
yeah,
it's this journey that we're seeing play out in real time of what it looks like for the one of the world's largest economies and industries to transition to a cleaner energy route, which I thought was really, really interesting. So I'll just throw out some really quick data points. China accounted for 60% of global solar capacity additions in
oh, wow,
2024. They have installed more than twice as much solar as the rest of the world combined, which I think is so interesting. That's a huge number.
yeah,
Their renewable capacity generation reached 1.9 billion kilowatts,
wow,
showing a 25% increase year on year. And they hold 64% of global solar jobs, and
yeah,
47% of global installed solar capacity. I think I said that.
yeah,
They dominate exports of solar panels, wind turbines, batteries, electrolyzers, and then they are reducing the global cost of clean energy by being, kind of the industrial backbone of the energy transition. So China plays a very, very significant role in the energy, both as an emitter,
yeah.
as a manufacturer, and a consumer.
Yeah. You see, now you've been giving numbers, yeah? Let me also give you numbers, yeah? So in
Tell us.
2024, China invested a record of $625 billion in clean energy, right? And that's nearly as much as the US and the EU combined. And in 2025, the global energy investments likely passed about $3.3 trillion, with $2.2 trillion flowing into like the clean energy technologies. And two-thirds of every dollar spent on energy globally is already going to cleaner options. But here's what China stands apart from every other country, right? They added 543 gigawatts of power capacity in 2025 alone. And since 2021, China has added more power capacity across all the energy technologies than the United States has built in its entire history. In its entire
Wow.
history. So China, their dominance is particularly visible in what they call like the new three sectors: the electric vehicles, the solar panels, and the batteries. And China exported more than 3 million EVs between January and November of 2025, which is,
Wait, what? January and November. So in 10, 11 months.
yeah, they
They
moved
exported how
about
many?
3 million EVs. And this is up from about 2 million units in 2024. And
Mm-hmm.
so in China, the EV adoption, for our listeners that don't know, sorry, what EV means, electric vehicles. So from the EV adoption in China has reached about 53% of its auto sales compared to just 5.8% 5 years earlier. And so for China is, I don't know how they do it. I don't, because sometimes I just watch some videos about China on YouTube and I see their cars and I'm like, these cars can stand anything, right? And I keep asking myself, why don't other countries ask for more of these cars to be brought into into their countries? Because one, they are cheaper, they're electronic vehicles, which I'm a huge fan of, and they even look better than some of these cars that we see, right? And I'm like, come on, why are we not having
Yeah.
peace? And I think that countries need to look into what China is doing and learn from it. Because even in the solar manufacturing sector, their technology and the cost leadership continues to accelerate because the Chinese low carbon energy firms are pushing deeper into the overseas markets with data showing massive export growth across the clean energy sector. And so for them is in the solar, in the electric space, in the batteries, these guys are dominating. And I think that is why for us we thought it was important that we have this conversation. We are not we have not been paid to market China, which I think is important we mention. But when you see countries that are doing things to protect the environment, I think it is important that we talk about it. And another interesting thing is China is also making major strides when it comes to green hydrogen. The Chinese electrolyzer technology has manufactured significantly over the years, and I saw a report that says that the market has doubled in size each year. The industry, they predict a fall breakout in 2027 and 2028. So they are saying that when it comes to the green hydrogen, what they are producing now will not be enough for the next 2 years. And so they're starting to produce what they know that in the next 2 years will be needed in 2026. So I think that every other country should look into what China is doing when it comes to the green space to see how they can adopt and what they can learn. Because at this point, if you tell me to move to
Yeah.
China now, Lobake, I'm
Toby
going to
needs to
China.
start learning Mandarin, apparently. Mandarin and Cantonese are high up on his list. But I think, I think it's really interesting, which is another
Yeah,
reason I wanted us to, have this conversation. I think
yeah,
it's a great topic for us to talk about
yeah,
and very timely too, because and we've been talking about this on the podcast, at least for the last year or so, right? That there's a
yeah,
global shift happening,
yeah,
right? Where Western countries that used to lead the charge on the sustainability conversation, so the EU, the US, there was the Paris Agreement and a lot
yeah,
of, Western centric policy and frameworks around sustainability and managing it is starting to change,
yeah,
right? And it's starting to change not just in the sustainability space but just generally in geopolitics, right? The world leaders are starting to change. I mean, we spoke about this a little bit in the previous episode, the last episode, where Mark Carney, who is the Prime Minister of Canada, spoke about middle powers coming forward and kind of playing a more crucial, more pertinent role in global governance.
yeah.
And then he set up the Canada Indo bloc that has, I think the last time I checked, there was like 13 or 14 countries that
Oh
are
wow.
kind of increasing trade with each other. Canada and China as well established some, kind of new trade relations. There's now visa-free movement between both countries. And so you're seeing a lot of countries filling the gap with stronger partnerships and relationships with Eastern countries. So
Yeah,
China, with Indonesia, Japan, and all these other places. And that shift is playing out in the sustainability space as well. So as we rightly kind of said so far, China is playing a significant role in both the manufacturing, consumption,
yeah,
and utilization of these clean energy products. With the car is a big one. A lot of people, if you haven't been in a BYD vehicle,
yeah,
at
yeah.
least that's the
Exactly.
one that I know. If you
Yeah,
haven't been in one, you should go in a B. It's actually really, really cool.
yeah,
It's a really cool car and it's quite affordable and accessible. I think even in Lagos here, there's a BYD
yeah.
dealership.
Yeah.
which is so interesting and so strategic in how China has built these relationships globally and have built a certain level of trust. And so people are buying into kind of the products and the solutions that they're putting forward on the market. Um, I think it's really interesting to see what that translates to policy wise. Right. So, a lot of the standards that we work with in the sustainability space, the frameworks, the
Yeah.
measurement kind of guidelines and stuff are all kind of Western written, Western determined. Um, and so I think one thing that I'm really kind of looking out for in the next couple of years is to see how or if that changes with, more Eastern dominance, right? With China kind of being very strategic about manufacturing solutions and the supply chain of
Yeah.
the energy transition. I wonder what that would look like in policy,
And
in global policy.
yeah, and talking about policy, I think the whole world will be the whole eyes of the world will be in China next month, where the Chinese government or the officials they will gather for what they do every year, which is like the annual legislative meeting, and this meeting is to improve on the country's 15th 5-year plan, which they said, and I think this plan is very important because it will set what people are saying will be like a critical target for the carbon intensity in terms of how
Mhm.
much China emits per unit of GDP. And also to be a very crucial test for China's climate leadership. I mean, the global backpedaling that's going on, particularly from the United States under the second Trump administration. And so I think for me, China is really moving from a period of market-driven experimentation to an era where they want to let people know that yes, we are here to stay, and these reforms and these policies will usher in government set price bans, limit on provincial volatility, and also supervise the market as well. And so I think this signals Beijing intention to basically tighten control as the stakes get higher. So I'm looking forward to that meeting in March and to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, I will be keeping my eyes out, or my eyes peeled. How do they say it? Where is this meeting? Do you know?
So I think it's the second week in March. It will be in China definitely during the
In China.
yeah
Who wants
the
to sponsor us to go to China and attend this meeting? So we can report direct, live and
yeah,
direct.
no, I'm really
But
looking forward to it because it's important to say a country that is setting plans and not just setting
mhm,
plans, but are putting the right measures in place to make sure that those plans
yeah,
come into play. And I think another interesting thing around China and its dominance is when it comes to its minerals, because their dominance extend beyond the generation
technology.
capacity of being able to control its critical minerals and its manufacturing supply chain, because China has positioned itself as an indispensable link when it comes to the global clean energy supply chain, from lithium to cobalt to rare earth element. And I think this gave the country that's what I'll call a considerable geopolitical leverage among other countries, because a lot of countries now are trying to scramble to secure these minerals from their own energy transitions, which
Mhm.
a lot of them are struggling with. And so I think for China, they've come to understand the importance of these things, and they're also protecting. And even though that um, the Canada Chinese partnership annoyed a lot of people in terms of the free movement, but hey, you can't tell a country what to do in terms of its foreign policy and its relationship with other people. But yeah, I think there's just a lot of things going on in China that even an episode will not be enough. So like I said, if you want to sponsor us to run a documentary on
Yes,
China, we're ready to do
yes.
that.
I think it's also important though to and I like to do this to have a bit of a reality check as well.
Yeah.
Right. So China is making a lot of good strides in the global energy transition solutions
Okay.
and technology and all of these things, but they still generate about 55% of their electricity from coal.
Okay.
And they're still responsible for a good portion. I think it's over 25 to 30% of global GHG emissions, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think I saw somewhere about coal being justified as like a backup to, the renewable solutions, energy solutions that are not quite, consistently reliable, if you will.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to point that out because, we're talking about a lot of really good things that they're doing, but I think it's also important to note, which I kind of mentioned in the beginning, right? That I think China's role in this energy transition is so interesting because they're both consumers, large consumers of renewable energy and like the energy transition. They are manufacturers. They play a key role in the manufacturing of clean energy solutions, but they're also large scale emitters.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that part is what makes it extra interesting, right? Because it's not like they are here solving the world's problems and
Mm.
wearing, the white suit. I don't know or they're saints in doing it, right? It's that interesting, delicate balance in
Yeah.
what this transition means for industry, for the economy, for, the everyday life and how they manage that and how that balance tips, in one direction over the years. I think will tell a lot more about how the rest of the world can do it
Yeah.
and do it more sustainably than not. So I just wanted to throw in that reality check a little bit because, they're doing really good things, but they're also still trying to figure it out, like a lot of countries are
Yeah.
doing, especially being such high emitters, being kind of very important players in industry. And how they figure it out, I think, would be a very interesting blueprint for other large industries like China, in India, like Nigeria, to emulate and
Yeah.
learn a few things from.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you see, as we've been talking about China, there are implications in terms of what are the implications for global
Mhm.
sustainability, because
Yep.
yes, we know that they are doing well. We know that yes, this dominance is great. But what does this dominance mean in terms of the global sustainability efforts? And I think that we need to look at the positive and also the challenging aspects. And I'll start with the upside in terms of we see and we know of China's massive investment in clean energy as we've been talking about, but we also see that the solar panel costs have gone up by 90% in the past decade, right? Making
Mhm.
renewable energy, sorry, has come down rather, which has made renewable energy the cheapest form of new electricity generation around the world. And this is due to the the scale of manufacturing and innovation in China. And I saw a study by the University of Oxford, which found that a rapid shift to renewable energy by 2050 will save the global economy at least $12 trillion in energy system costs. And so the more renewable energy that is manufactured, the cheaper it gets. And China is doing everything it can to accelerate that learning curve faster than anyone had predicted. So in as much as
Mhm.
yes, this is what they're doing, it's also going to save the economy, save the world. Like $12 trillion is no joke,
A
right?
lot of
And
money, yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of money. And another interesting thing is that a lot of Chinese experts are also enabling developing countries to leapfrog from their fossil fuel infrastructure, like
Mhm.
countries across Africa, we've seen in Latin America, we've even seen in Southeast Asia that could not afford the expensive Western renewable technology are now looking for the cheaper ones, the cheaper Chinese solar panels. And not that these ones are just cheaper and not good, they're cheaper and very good. They're looking at the cheaper Chinese solar panels, the wind turbines, the battery storage systems, and this democratization, yeah, of clean energy technology, I believe is very, very transformative because the sheer scale of deployments in China is also proving that, see, the intermediate renewable can work at the grid scale when there's a proper storage and management system. And so I think China is helping the world to exceed 213 gigawatt by 2025, 2026 rather. And so I'm looking forward to reading the numbers at the end of the year in terms of production, in terms of scale, in terms of the countries that have now benefited from this great thing that China is doing. And so I also want to talk about the challenges. I don't know if you have anything you want to chip in before I continue.
No. I certainly agree. I think also with financing, right?
Yeah,
So China and Africa, one key part of the relationship is, financing and project development or implementation, if you will.
yeah,
So like infrastructure, building infrastructure and all of those things. And I was looking for the number, and ODI says apparently, or an estimated 59% of current energy projects in Africa, China's projects in Africa, are focused on solar, wind, and hydropower, so renewable energy projects. So there's also a shift in the projects that they're investing in, and how they measure, I guess, the impact of the
yeah,
projects that they're doing on the continent, which I think is really interesting because obviously, as they are making bolder commitments and investing more resources into cleaning and greening up their operations locally, then they also have to think about what their operations internationally contributes to that, right? So there's going to be an increase in kind of mandatory reporting and disclosures for their operations outside. So, like in Africa, if they're building infrastructure projects, right, that has to be done in as green a way as possible to
yeah,
ensure that obviously it is still in line with their strategy that they have locally, which I think is really really interesting because like I said, it's also changes the way these countries that they're working with
yeah.
interact with and build those partnerships and what they are committing to also implement for themselves. So I think it will be interesting.
Yeah, and I remember at the start of this conversation, you mentioned something about China and coal. And so there's this
Mhm.
MIT professor who was speaking at a panel at the Albert Kennedy School, and he said that we see addition, not transition, in terms of
Mm.
China is building alternative sources of energy as well as fossil energy sources simultaneously, right? And so, despite all the amazing renewable capacity addition, China still generates 60% of its power from coal, and which
Yeah.
makes the country add coal capacity of 6% in 2025. So yeah, you might say, oh, that is not dramatic growth, right? But it's still growth nonetheless, right? And they also see that there's this coal-based thermal power generation did fall in 2025, like for the first time in decades, which is encouraging. But I think that the baseline still remains extraordinarily high. And if you look at 2025, China's CO2 emission was roughly double those of Europe and the United States combined, which is ridiculous, despite the fact that we are seeing the emissions reduce. China still remains the world's largest emitter, which is responsible for
Mhm.
about 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So I don't know how they will do it in terms of being able to balance this thing because you can't be generating or producing um, EVs and looking solar panels, and you're still generating your power from coal. So you're feeding the world your innovation, which is great, but you're also still powering your power from what the world is trying to stay away from. So I just hope that in 2026 they find a better way to generate power because 60% of its power from coal is a lot, which according to data says that its emission for 2025 is double those of Europe and the USA combined. That tells a lot. So I just hope that in 2026, as they're creating these great innovations for the world to consume, they're also looking at reducing their carbon emission.
Yeah. I think we definitely in season 4 would follow and track some of these
Yeah,
changes. And kind of see um what that looks like in the sustainability space. It would be really interesting to see it play out.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I believe that its dominance, China's dominance, will definitely shape the global
Yes.
sustainability landscape. Um, because if you look at it, none of these are mutually exclusive in terms of we might see element of these things playing out in the future. Because if you look at, like I mentioned, the emission of China, it went up from the mid 2020s, and there was a bit of a decline, but later again it came up. So I just hope that come March, when they are looking at their plans, they set a very ambitious carbon intensity target that exceed the expectation of everybody, because the the China carbon market it's a lot that it covers a lot of sectors,
Yeah.
and it also creates a lot of price signals, if I'll put it that way. So I'm really looking
Yeah.
forward to its meeting in March and see the policies that that will come out of it, because 2030 is just around the corner. Um, I don't know if we'll be able to. I'm still trying to be positive that 2030, which is 4 years from now, that look is not encouraging like here. But
I
yes,
mean, there's positivity, and
yeah,
then there's, reality, or, a pragmatic approach to kind of, thinking about these things. How I am changing my approach to 2030 is not a dead stop,
it's not the
right?
what?
It's not a dead stop,
Oh, okay, yeah,
right? It was a target, it was something, a goal, a timeline for us to work towards, but the world is not ending at 2030, right? So for me, success now looks like significant progress
mm,
as opposed to like a complete tick box, because we know that's not happening. So instead of me kind of having a super negative approach and feeling about where we are as a world in 2030 with some of these goals that we've set for ourselves, I think for me, I'm taking it as, can we measure significant progress since we set
mm,
these
mm,
goals 15 years ago,
yeah,
10 years ago? Right. And if we can do that, then I take that as a, okay, now let's multiply this effort by X for the next sprint of 10, 15, 20 years. And
yeah,
hopefully that gets us a lot closer to, the net zero targets that we set for 2050, 2060,
mm,
than the alternative.
yeah,
And so for me, I think that's the approach that I have going forward. And I think with China playing such a significant role in advancing energy security, also industrial policy, and greening in the industrial spaces and the industrial sector. I am definitely going to be keeping a big eye on what they do, what they say, what they create. And I think everybody else should be particularly, in general, because they're playing
yeah,
a huge role in all of the spaces right now. But I think particularly in the sustainability sector, because I think the next decades would be defined by, what China's doing. Because as we've said kind of in this conversation a couple of times, they play such a significant role
yeah,
across the entire value chain, right? Being the
yeah,
manufacturers, being kind of consumers, being emitters. And so I think everybody should pay attention to kind of what's happening, what's coming from China, and
yeah,
how that impacts and directs global action towards sustainability.
yeah, 100%. Because I've been looking at it that, okay, now where does this leave us? Because it is important that we hold several truths simultaneously, even when sometimes this truth might feel what I'll call contradictory. Because we've talked about China's investment in clean energy, manufacturing, and its deployment is great, which in terms of is accelerating. We've also talked about that China remains the world's largest emitter and continue to build its fossil fuel infrastructure alongside its renewables. But I think for me, the key insight is that this 2026 will be or rather, will mark a shift in how we think about the energy transition. because it will no longer be about the climate pledges or the international agreement. It will be more about executions. It will be more about the policies that this country sets. And also you see economic competitions among countries, because as the World Economic Forum mentioned, that governments are less interested in being climate champions now. Everyone is working towards securing their industries and the jobs for the future. And so I believe that as we move forward in the year, we see countries now looking at, okay, how can I, it's not about making the pledges, but how can I do things that we secure the future of my country? Because it's one thing for you to make these pledges. It's another thing for you to go back to your country, and even before you even leave the country where you made those pledges, you've forgotten about it, right? Because I'm sure that every country that has its, for example, minister for climate, that they change offices, right? And everybody will come with their own agenda to say, oh, my own agenda for this year is this. The agenda of previous governments is none of my business. And so I just hope that this year we see a lot of countries taking actions when it comes to protecting the environment, rather than the usual international agreement that we see with the usual, oh, I pledge to do this, I pledge to do that, all just for the show of it, and basically not taking action. Because if China has decided that yes, the clean energy technology that are producing represent the future of economic power, so be it. Whether that accelerates global sustainability or creates new dependencies and tensions, I guess that would define the coming decades as we go along. And so I think that the story of China energy dominance that as we've been talking about is not just simple as we say it. I think it is important that we look at, okay, as a country or as a people, what can we do to also support the effort of our own government, of our own country, to make sure that we protect our environment in terms of the air that we breathe in terms of the things that we produce, in terms of the emission that we put out there. How can we reduce it? And so I think everybody has a role to play, not just the government. That is one thing I try to always tell people, that yes, we know the role of the government. There's also the role of the people. And so it is important that for anyone listening, ask yourself, what can I do to play my part in terms of protecting the environment?
And with that note, with
Yes,
that note,
we come to the end of another
yes,
episode. And so, guys,
another
if you
episode.
found this conversation valuable, please share it with friends, share it with colleagues,
Yeah.
share it with people who are finding this climate conversation very, very complex, right? And also, please send us your questions, send us your suggestions, what you think China can do, what you think other countries should do. And I hope that we've been able to do our best to be able to do justice to this topic. And so please share, like, subscribe, and
Yes, I would like to hear what our audience thinks about China's role in the transition. So please leave your comments, send us messages
yeah,
on all the platforms.
yeah.
We can pick up the conversation again. But as always, it was great to think out loud, research, and have this discussion in the sustainability space. And I look forward to the next episode. Thank you so much again for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.